Welcome to the Lori Clarke Show. My name is Lori and I'm the host of the Lori Clarke Show. Today we are talking about binge eating with Nan Saysana. She and I had an excellent conversation about being curious about your cravings because the cravings are leading to feelings. And she encourages everyone who's listening that this is not a lack of willpower or something that you have to endure alone. We're going to slow down and talk about her experience with binge eating and how she has found a new relationship with food after 30 years. She encourages so many people to learn more about what they are feeling, how their feelings are wanting to be expressed, or at the very least becoming curious about your feelings. And she shares some incredible insights that are just fabulous. A quick note before we start. This episode includes discussions of binge eating and the emotional experience around food. If that feels tender right now, please take care of yourself in whatever way is needed. This episode is not intended as psychological, medical, or treatment advice. I am not a psychologist, therapist, or medical professional. If you are struggling or feel overwhelmed at any point, please reach out to a licensed mental health professional, medical practitioner, or trusted person in your life. You deserve care that meets you where you are at. I am so privileged to have you. So, how about you share a little bit about yourself as well as your experience, and then we can begin to talk about how you support people.
Yes, totally. No, you've got this. Yeah, so my experience. So it started when I was a teenager, like so many people, so many women, I believe. The more I talk to them, the more similarities I can see in my story and their stories. I started dieting because I was told that, yeah, I was a bit plump when I realized now I was not plump at all. I was perfectly normal. But I heard that. And when maybe that's your experience too, when you're a teenager, you start focusing on your appearance, wondering what others are thinking of you, what you look like, etc. So I was starting to be aware of my appearance and what people could potentially think about it. So I started dieting. I started my first diet, I believe I was 16 or so. And then I lost weight. I got complimented over that. And was kind of scared because I realized, okay, that's not really who I want to be. I don't want to shrink. I don't want to be small. I was always afraid of taking too much space, but there I was told that it was actually okay if I took less and less space. So I didn't really like that. Felt like some form of resistance. And then I stopped, dieting, and my weight was low enough. And then I immediately started eating more, maybe because I had been restricting myself, which is so common too. You start restricting yourself and then you go to the other side, which is you start eating more. And then I was telling myself, okay, but I can't eat too much, because if I eat too much, then of course I'm gaining weight. And I could see it on the scale. I could see it in the way I was feeling in my clothes. And so I started dieting again, wanting to lose the weight that I had gained. And then this yo-yo dieting spiral, this back and forth between overeating and undereating, started and became more and more a pattern that was my go-to pattern. And as you said, yes, it felt like I was feeling powerless. I was stuck in this loop, like I was stuck in quicksand. And there seemed to be no way out of this. The only thing that I thought made sense was to restrict my food. But then each time I did that, I was immediately going back to the overeating as soon as I allowed myself to have the food. And yeah, I was feeling really powerless about that. And you're right, there was also a lot of secrecy, a lot of shame, because the the messages that we hear is that no, people shouldn't do that. You should feel you should eat in moderation. You should eat like this, like an ogre. That's how I felt, because this is bad. This means you have no restraint over your impulses. That makes you a bad person and so on. And that's what I started believing about myself. So I didn't want people to know that I was this ogre behind the scenes, on my own. I didn't want people to know. So I started eating in secret, especially also since my parents would comment when they saw that the peanuts were disappearing, they saw the chocolate was disappearing. They started making comments, and I didn't want to hear that. So I started eating food in secrets. And I kept doing this even when I was married, even for 30 years. It was this pattern of I'm eating shamefully in secret, hoping no one will notice. But strangely enough, the kids always found the, the fruits, packaging that I had folded in tiny, neat pieces. They would find it and just, oh, what's that? And
Yes.
and things like that. And so I was stuck in this pattern for 30 years, and it was not pleasant at all, if that makes sense.
Oh, it all makes sense. Your personal journey matters so much. And I hear you say 30 years. And I on the show I talk a lot about patterns and cycles and ways in which so many times we think, well, I've been doing this for decades. This is how I have been doing my life. And I was just having this conversation with someone the other day saying, you know what? I'm done living, incidentally, for 30 years this way and trying to solve this problem with the same words, the same actions, the same um uh remedies. It's time for new tools for me. And it sounds like after 30 years, you were saying, it sounds like I need to have new tools because how I'm approaching this is just rearranging the chairs. I'm not doing anything to change this. Can you share with us what the hardest thing? Because I think people want to know the hardest thing that you did to change this. Because if it's 30 years, that means it's inset. That means all kinds of things have had to happen in your brain, in your actions. You've done all of the things. But what was the hardest thing to change or to adjust for you?
What a beautiful question. Thank you. So, yes, I believe the hardest thing was really changing the pattern, as you said, because for 30 years, that was the pattern, that was the go to, that was the cycle, as you said. And I was believing that it was the only way to go because I had
Right.
done it for so long. So not only was I believing it, but I kept proving to myself, like, look, I'm trying to change the food. I'm trying to obey the calories in, calories out. So I'm trying to eat differently. I'm trying to eat less. I'm trying to eat different foods. I'm trying to exercise more so that also I use the calories I bring in. But as you said, it was just a rearranging the chairs. It was not changing anything deeply. And when you were saying yes, rearranging the chairs, it made me think of that. I believe it's Einstein who said that madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting results to be different. That's what I was
Results.
doing. I didn't know
Yes.
that, of course. I thought I was really changing things the way it was supposed to, the way it would work, but it was not. So the hardest thing was really changing this pattern. And it started with understanding that what I was doing, so basically for me, it was eating too much, eating in secret, eating too fast. What I was doing was not something random. It had nothing to do with the food. That was the harder thing. Dissociating the food from eating. Because in between those two things, there are two steps that I couldn't see. And most of the time we can't see them because it goes too fast. We've been in that pattern for so long that bloop, it
No.
just goes
Right.
by and we don't notice them.
Right.
But it's
Right.
technically that if I was eating too much, it was because I was feeling a certain way. And it could be as simple, as innocent as if there was a piece of chocolate cake in front of me that It could be the desire, the impulse, the compulsion to have it or to have more of it. So I didn't know that it was not the food being here that drove me to eat it. It was this desire I had, this urge, this craving I had for the food. And this craving, contrary to what I was thinking, was not coming from the food. Because if we think of it, when the food is here, but I'm feeling very, very bad, poorly, I've got the flu, or I'm feeling nauseous, or whatever, the food is here, but I don't want it. So
Right.
the wanting the food had nothing to do with the food, even though I thought it was. The wanting the food was because I was telling myself, ooh, this looks so good. Or I deserve it. I've worked very hard today. Or oh, I've been longing for this sense of pleasure all day long. That were the thoughts that were creating the desire, the compulsion, the craving, whatever you name it, for the food, the wanting the food. And when I wanted the food, I didn't know I could actually pause there and just want the food without obeying the compulsion. I could also pause there. So that realization was the hardest thing for me to learn because it took much longer than I wanted it to take. But it was also so mind blowing. It was so different from what we hear. You want to lose weight? You want to change your body? Well, calories in, calories out. It can be that simple. No, it was missing steps. Those my thoughts are actually what are creating this wanting for the food. And when I want the food, I immediately obey the want instead of so many other options because now I know there are plenty other options.
Um, yes, this craving, wanting the food, longing for a sense of pleasure. And that was what sounds like overrode the what I would say is just your sense of balance, maybe.
Yes.
Um, so then you said something that I thought interesting. I've been jotting notes as you uh, are talking, and I just wonder. So you said the craving piece, and that's kind of the first step, which is feeling a certain way about food. Now, you said earlier that you were afraid of taking too much space in the world. And I wonder, have you ever thought about the connection between those two things? Like, if you are longing for a sense of pleasure, a sense of joy, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of happiness, and you are afraid to take too much space in the world, there's not room for both of those things.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you that the fear of yes taking too much space and also yes feeling accomplished because of what I'm doing in my life, etc. Yeah, they sound contradictory. I say,
Yes.
yeah, but now
It
I know.
it sounds contradictory, but it kind of makes sense. If you have a longing, if you are pushing yourself down, suppressing desire and
Yes,
joy, and then you would like food to fill that desire and joy, then this is the vicious cycle that you're speaking about.
yes, yes, yes. Because yeah, I like what you're saying about suppressing and then creating some more.
Right.
Is that what we resist? I think it's Carl Jung who said that what we resist persists. So if I'm resisting that I want to have a life that's meaningful, then of course it's going to show up in a different way. And for me, it showed up with food because yes, maybe at that time I was extremely shy, extremely reserved, extremely quiet. So that's made sense for me to be, take less space, etc. But at the same time, I wanted to have a full life. And so that expressed itself, perhaps, I don't really know about that, but I like where you're going, into food because food, it's accessible. Food is allowed. We're supposed to eat, right? At least 3 meals a day. It's something that's socially acceptable. Not as much, perhaps, as other things, other coping mechanism, like smoking, drinking alcohol, things like that. So it was kind of accepted to eat food. So yeah, it was easy for me to go there. Yeah. Mm.
What would the second step to that be? So if the first is feeling a certain way, then what is the second piece of that?
Yes. So so I let me know if that's what you mean. But for me, the second piece would be to understand where my feelings are coming from. Because I used
Yes.
to, first of all, I was not brought up in a family where we talked about feelings. My parents, just like my grandparents, didn't know, they didn't have a lot of vocabulary as far as emotions were concerned, because that's not something that we're supposed to talk about or even express or even have. And realized that whenever I was feeling angry or kind of sad, immediately my parents would try to fix it as if something had gone wrong. But actually, I now know that it's perfectly normal to feel sad or angry or all sorts of emotions because I'm a human being. That's it. Nothing's gone wrong. And so understanding that emotions are valid, whatever emotions we're feeling, they're valid. Even jealousy, sometimes, or envy. Sometimes we think, oh, I shouldn't be jealous. You shouldn't be jealous. You shouldn't want what other people are having. But actually, it's a human emotion, and maybe it has a message for us. Like that's also something that you want to have. Nothing's gone wrong. So understanding that emotions are okay, and they're not coming actually from whatever is in the world. So the food, if we're talking about the food, or the little toy, if we're talking about a kid, they're coming from what we're thinking about the food, about the toy, about ourselves, about anything. They're coming from our interpretation of the world, our interpretation or our opinion about us. That's where emotions are coming from. So this piece was extremely important for me, understanding that I don't get an emotion randomly because it's raining or because it's sunny, but I'm having an emotion because of what I make it mean. If it's raining and I don't like the rain, I can be upset. But if it's raining and I'm thinking, ooh, my vegetables are going to grow, we're not changing the world and the weather, but I'm choosing to experience the weather differently because of what I'm choosing to think. And that gave me power, because then I understood, okay, I can also shift the way I'm thinking about whatever is happening in my world. It's this glass story, this pessimistic or optimistic way to see the world. It's just the glass is always half empty, half full. It's always the same quantity of water, but we don't know it. But we choose to think of it in a particular way that makes us feel bad, or in a particular way that makes us feel more hopeful about life. And we have the power to choose the way we think about it.
We have the power to choose the way we think. I really appreciate what you're saying. The emotion is what we make it mean. That's very, very powerful. So thank you for sharing that piece. Now, how do you take all of this life lesson that you've learned over these 30 years, and what and how do you relate that to people?
Mm,
How are you working with people in um with, I would say, is it okay to say, who struggle with binge eating? Is that how you would?
right. That's very often what they say. Yes, I struggled with binge eating. Or they will give me examples like, I can never stop at one biscuit, one Oreo. I have to eat the whole bag, the whole sleeve, the whole box. I can't stop. That's what they tell me. And it's quite common, actually. I thought I was a freak when I realized I was eating more than I knew my body needed, but it's actually extremely common, which was a relief when I realized that. So that's why I really want l- everyone to know that, first of all, it's quite common. And then there's a solution to it, because I think it reduces the shame. You were talking about being shameful, eating in secret. That's because we think something's very wrong with us. And basically, yes, we're not eating the way we want to, but it's also something that we can accept, we can understand, instead of criticizing ourselves and thinking that we're doing something extremely wrong. It's it's a behavior.
Right, it's a behavior. So the question of am I the only one? So often I've thought that about my life.
Yeah.
I look at what is happening to me or my narratives and I think I'm the only one that feels this way. And then when I start talking about it, I quickly realize I'm not the only one. And it brings such a validation to your problem, to your pattern, to the cycling narrative, to the worry. It helps there be some form of validation. So, um, how do people know if they are binge eating or just overeating? And what are they really afraid that that answer will
Mm.
say about them?
Okay. Yes. So binge eating means that you eat a lot of food in a very short amount of time, and you feel shame after doing it. So that's what binge eating is basically. And the difference with overeating is that overeating could be grazing throughout the day, having a biscuit, a cookie here and there, having a candy, um, things like that, and feeling maybe guilty, but not necessarily ashamed. That's the difference. And what I tell my clients is that we can measure, if we want to measure that, roughly speaking, in terms of the DIFF. I learned that acronym thanks to Renée Stevens, who used to have a podcast called Inside Out Weight Loss. And what she meant by the DIFF with the DIFF was that it was the duration, the intensity, and the frequency. The duration, how long do you eat? Or is it 5 minutes? Is it 5 hours? How long does it last? The I stands for the intensity. Is it just one cookie that you overeat, or is it one box? And the frequency, F stands for the frequency. How often do you do that? And I like to use this DIF, so duration, intensity, frequency, with my clients when they come to me to assess, to see where they are at when we start working together. And also, which is much more fun, where they want to go. How, how long do they want to overeat? How intensely do they want to overeat? How frequently do they want to overeat? So that we have a path. We're starting here, we're going there, and we'll see how we get there.
So you're not saying to them, we're going to talk about limitations. We're going to say this duration is you can only eat for this duration. You can only have this kind of intense desire for what you're asking. You're saying, what do you want?
Yes,
And that's
absolutely.
a very different positioning because anytime, I mean, I'm speaking for me, but if somebody says, you're not supposed to eat any carbohydrates today. All I can think about is potatoes.
Of course.
I want that bread.
Yes.
So you're taking out this confining thing and you're saying, what is it that you actually want?
Yes, totally. And it's so
Oh,
freeing. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and then you're going to say, it's so freeing. And what I wanted to ask was, so tell us about the wants. How do you give people the permission to want?
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Yes, indeed. Giving the permission to want is so important. And to go back to what you were saying before, answer your question, it's true that when we tell ourselves or when we hear, you shouldn't have this, or this is bad for you, this is naughty food, this is bad food, then it becomes the forbidden fruit. It becomes all we can think of because we're thinking, oh, but I do want this. It's so good. It's so unique. Perhaps it's a seasonal food, but I mustn't. So on the one hand, we're increasing the desire we have for this food, but we're also telling ourselves, no, 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 bad for you. You can't have it, which is exactly what we're talking about. We're resisting, and what we resist persists. So immediately, whenever we create that sense of restriction, we also create the opposite, which is this sense of rebellion. And then it's like a rubber band. It's just like you make it super tight by saying, no, 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 no. And then when you give in, you tell yourself, okay, whatever. And the rubber band instead of stretching, it snaps and it can be hard. So I've realized for myself, but also my clients come to realize too, that restricting is definitely not the solution. Limiting food, limiting the amount of food, limiting the types of food that you eat, it's the surest way that it will backfire and that you will end up having more of what you wanted to limit. So instead of that, I do exactly what you suggest, what you said. It's giving them permission to want. So giving them permission to want, maybe it's a certain size of clothes, maybe it's a certain number on the scale. This is whatever they want, but also giving themselves permission to have the food that they want. And it's completely different from, okay, you should never have this type of food, but instead it's, yes, you want that food. So let's explore that. Why do you want that food? And let's have it. Let's have the food. But instead of eating fast behind your back, you know, not even looking at the food, not even tasting the food because you eat it so much, let's pause. Let's take a moment. Let's really block time in your calendar for this. Let's go in the open. I know I started for myself eating in a bakery that's at the bottom of my building. And I took the brownie that I so wanted and I took my time and I focused on the 5 sensations. What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it taste like when I eat it? What's the texture like? What are the flavors? What's the sound that I can hear when I bite into this walnut? And really focusing on that, giving myself permission to slow down and to really enjoy it, first, I felt so much more satisfied physically, but also emotionally. And also, I realized something that was mind blowing. What I thought would be fantastic, excellent, so delicious, actually was not as good after the first 3 bites. And then I came to realize that actually I thought it would be so good. But the idea I had about this experience was so much more beautiful than the reality of the food. And now, when I go to restaurants and I'm tempted by desserts, I still have desserts sometimes, and I'm not thinking any badly of myself because of that, but I'm very often disappointed. What looked amazing on paper on the menu, actually, I feel disappointed about. It's never as good as I thought it would be. And knowing that, it's so easy now to think, well, no, I don't need that. I can do without. Whereas before it was just, no, 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 I can't. I mustn't. It's bad for me. And all sorts of restrictions.
So this is fascinating. This is so fascinating. What I hear is um, taking that moment to taking up the space of that moment where you are saying this brownie that you so wanted. But before that, in order to get yourself to that spot, you said, I'm going to just sit for a minute, create space, create a present moment, and I'm going to give my whole self to that moment. The very thing that you were mentioning early on, which is when I was younger, I just didn't want to take the space up. It was the losing. I was afraid to take space. Well, if you're taking the whole moment and you're taking the space of that whole moment to reflect on, it's a very powerful, um, way to interact with emotion, feeling, and the desire.
Yes, being fully present of the moment. It's what we call mindful eating. And what's
Right.
beautiful is that you can do that with anything. You can do that with enjoying your coffee. You can do that by just looking at your kids or at your cats. You can do that when you're going for a walk. Being present in the moment, it just intensifies the moment. It makes it even more pleasurable. We numb by rushing, by overdoing things. Some people overeat, but some people overdrink, some people overspend,
Right. Right.
over, scrolling. Some people, I had a client who used to tidy her house especially the cushions on her sofa, you know, frantically whenever she was feeling upset. And that's just a coping mechanism. We're using something external not to feel something that we don't know how to feel. It can be anger, frustration, disappointment, whatever we're experiencing, or even joy, or even pleasant emotions, but we don't know how to tackle them because we have never done that before. We haven't been taught how to be present with whatever we're feeling. And so we outsource this relationship with our emotions by doing things, not to feel. And tell me,
Well, then what's hunger?
yeah, okay. Well, hunger is our body telling us we need fuel. So hunger is a sensation. It's the body giving us information as to, yeah, I need something. I need the food so that I can keep functioning. It's the same with thirst. It's the same with tiredness. The body's telling
Mhm.
us something. Um, so that's hunger. And food is meant to solve hunger, but it can't solve emotions, right? Food can never solve emotions. Um, and that's the difference between hunger and desire. Desire is not coming from the food. Desire is not coming from the body. The desire is coming from what we're thinking about the
Right.
food. Because there are food that we do want, and we change our minds about some food. I don't know about you, but when you were little, maybe you loved certain foods that you no longer crave. And maybe the opposite. I know that I hated spinach. Now I quite like them.
Me too.
Yeah. So it has nothing to do with the body. Maybe, of course, there was also something in the body. We changed, the body changed, and maybe the body is saying, "Ooh, this feels better for me now than it used to, because maybe beforehand I didn't need it as much." Tell me.
This has just come to me, so maybe you've thought about this. So, as you're talking about desire and craving, earlier on in the conversation, we said wanting food is a longing for some um, form of desire or pleasure, right? So, is there a space where, in this moment of saying, um, I'm hungry, that you're wanting you're you're wanting fulfillment,
Hmm.
you're wanting satiety, you want to be satiated,
Mm-mm.
and instead of leaning into, well, maybe my job isn't the right job for me. Maybe there's relationships in my life where I'm over giving, I'm over responsible, and I'm feeling really mad about this. Instead, we interpret the craving for the food as a lost longing or desire.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally, totally. Um, yes, and sometimes the hunger and using food as a coping mechanism go together, hand in hand. Typically in the evening, because we are hungry maybe for the last meal of the day, and also it's the time of the day when maybe we come back from work, maybe we still have a huge to-do list. I know some of my clients still have a lot to do when they come home to take care of their families, but maybe also they want some time for themselves to do what they enjoy, their hobbies. And so they've got this conflict going on. It's just like, I still have so much to do, and I also want to do this. So all sorts of conflicts, plus the hunger. And also, there's this question that I know that one of my clients expressed so clearly. At the end of the day, she was thinking, is that it? Is that all there is to life? And she was feeling that void, that emptiness. So she was turning to food not to feel the emptiness, but also to feel the void, literally speaking, right? So we unpacked that, we untangled that, and we realized, yes, she was using food on those different levels. And that was an option. It was okay. We understood why she was doing that. And she also had the choice to behave differently if she wanted to. And she did.
Oh. Okay, so speak to this void part.
Mhm.
Can you add a little bit more to that?
Yeah.
Like, what did that mean for you? And yeah. I'm curious about the void.
Yes. And it can, so she was talking about void, feeling empty, but it could also um, look like boredom. At the end of the day, you feel bored. Or for me, at the end of the day, I was so tired for exactly as you were saying, overgiving, thinking of so many things. I used to be a teacher, so I used to think about all my classes, all my students, my lessons to prepare, my papers to mark, plus the kids, my kids, plus the cat, my husband, the state of their house, etc. And I was feeling overwhelmed with this. So I was exactly like my client thinking, okay, but there's too much going on. I was wishing at that time to be able to take my brain, and just putting it to the side. Just, okay, let it rest for a little bit. And the only space I could find to have this break that I so craved, that was really what I was craving, was to use food. Because, yeah, it's the end of the day, it's mealtime, it's allowed to have food. And so I would eat and eat and eat and eat, a lot more than I actually needed. But because I was telling myself, well, it's allowed, it's food, I need food to survive. I need food because it's dinner time. So that's why I was using that space to feel myself.
Using that space to feel yourself. Uh-huh. So, as you work with people, what do you have a method or a way in which you begin to walk people through? So, for our listeners, is there a process that you walk people through so that they can begin to feel something right now if this is something that resonates with them?
Yes, yes. So the method, so I've been trained into in coaching, life coaching, and also in recently havening techniques. And so I use so havening techniques those are quite new. Not a lot of people have heard of them. So but basically it's using the sense of touch, and we know that babies um, crave the sense of touch. We know that it's super important for babies, for them to thrive, to be held um, by their parents, by their caregivers, so that they thrive. What I didn't know and what I've learned is that as grown-ups, we also need touch, other people's touch, but also simply ourselves. And it can look very simple. It can be hugging yourself as if you were giving yourself a hug, or rubbing your hands, or touching your face, touching your cheeks, touching your forehead. It can be that simple. But when you do that, you give your brain a sense of security, because it generates what scientists call, I'm not a scientist, so I can't go into detail, I'm afraid, but that's what I understood. It generates delta waves in the brain. And it's basically when you're feeling boredom or overwhelm or stress or frustration, it's as if your brain was under an alarm. There's a big alarm going on. And when you touch your face, touch your forehead, stroke your hands and stuff, it creates those delta waves that functions just like a mute button on the alarm system. So it
Hmm.
immediately creates a sense of safety in your brain. And then when you feel that safe, you can access another part of you, which is understanding why you turn to the food, for instance, which is what I was telling you earlier on, which is your thoughts create your feelings that drive your actions that then will have an impact in your life. You can have access to that, and then you can understand little by little what's going on, why you're turning to food, why you're doing this instead of that you would prefer doing. Then we gain
Hmm.
access to that, and we don't have to go super far away into your childhood and so on. We can, but we don't have to. We can just simply go back to the latest example, the latest time when you turn to food, when you had sworn, no, 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 today I'll be good. No, 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 today I'll follow my plan. I'll stick to my plan, because that's the most recent thing that happened. That's the most interesting thing to explore, because it's so close to you to experience, and we impact that. We understand, and understanding is really like, I like to use this analogy, is like when you try to rearrange a room when it's dark, when there's no light on. Well, good luck with that. Good luck
Good
with
luck.
not tripping and hurting
Yep.
yourself. But when you switch on the light, then it's so much easier to see what there is and then to move the furniture. That's exactly what we're doing. We want to understand what was happening so that then, if you want to, you can change a thing here and there. And slowly but surely, by doing this again and again and again, you understand more what your pattern is or what your patterns are, and it becomes clear why you're doing this. We also bring some kindness, some compassion with, of course, it makes sense that I'm doing this because I've been doing it for so long, because maybe I was taught that, yeah, you scrape your knee, have a cookie. You're bored? Well, have some food.
Eat. Yeah.
And then you
You're
can
you're
change
you're
that.
having strong emotions. Let me make you something for dinner.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And none of those things, I don't hear you saying that those things are wrong, or it's just reshaping where the emotion fits in.
Yes, yes.
Being finding courage and bravery to say, does this food, does this craving have meaning? And then asking your body, okay, what is the meaning here? What is the message?
Mm-mm. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
totally. What's the message? Because wanting food is not necessarily a problem.
No.
On the contrary, well, I used to think they were monsters. Whenever I had cravings, I would dread the cravings I would have all day long, thinking, okay, because if I have a craving, then I can't resist it. I can't do anything about it, but obey the craving and tend to the food. But once I started understanding that if I'm craving food, it's not a problem. On the contrary, it's a message telling me that something's off. And when I started being curious about this craving, then I started to understand myself better. And then I became closer to myself, if that makes sense. I started becoming my own best friend instead of relying on food to soothe me. But I
Yes.
decided that, yes, I can be kind to myself. I can behave the way I want to behave.
Oh. So this works?
Yes. That's a question. Yes, the answer is yes. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, it does work. Like, it's so simple.
Mm, yes, it is simple. And yet, because we've been in this pattern for so long, it's become
Yeah.
automatic. And when it's
Right.
automatic, that's when it's fast. And think of it, I'm guessing that when you brush your teeth, you don't think really consciously about what you're doing. You just do it.
No.
The
Yes.
problem is that it's the same with food. If we tend to turn to food, it's become a pattern. It, it, some of my clients call it the autopilot. We do it on autopilot, and then we realize after that, and then we blame ourselves for doing that. So it is simple indeed to think, okay, I did that. Why? What was I feeling that made me do that? What was I thinking that made me feel this way that made me do that? So it is simple, but it can be frustrating because it's not immediate.
Hmm. Well, if it can be frustrating because it's not immediate, that means, so you're saying you don't need willpower then. What you need, no, because it's almost like if I'm going to change this and I'm going to be, then I got to get my willpower. I got to brace myself. No, and you're saying, no, this is just, you're simply paying more attention.
Yes. Yes.
So there's no willpower, there's not a backup diet, it's just more about saying, "Listen, your craving equals something. The craving equals fill in the blank.
Mm-mm.
What is that for you?"
Yes, absolutely. This is it.
Okay.
And to go back to what you were saying on willpower, lots of people come to me saying, well, I don't have enough willpower. I have not enough willpower. I lack willpower. There's something wrong with my willpower. But
Yes.
actually, the thing is that willpower is like a phone battery, for instance. You start the day with a lot of willpower. That's why it's so often very easy to make a good decision, if we want to call them this way, in the morning. But then the problem is that you run out of willpower as the day goes by because you've used it for so many decisions. And I think the number is really staggering. I think it's I may be wrong, but between 300 and 700 decisions throughout the day. We don't realize it, but scientists have done the math.
Yes.
And so, of
Right.
course, it makes complete sense that by the end of the day, your willpower has gone through the window. So it's not a sustainable option. It's not the tool that you need that is going to help you in the long run, especially in the evening, especially in the evening when we do have the time to eat more than our body need. So willpower is indeed not the right tool to use for solving this. And willpower is basically when we tell ourselves, I really want this, but I mustn't.
Well,
And
yeah, then we're just pushing it down.
exactly.
We're pushing it down and saving it for later.
Yes.
So when somebody says to you, Nan, I have no willpower, your response is, how do you lead them?
Yes. So first of all, when they tell me I have no willpower, I show them that it's not true. They do have willpower and they use it. The problem is that they can't use it again when they really want to because it's gone. And also, I show them that there's another way to do it. So because basically willpower is I want this, but I can't have it. And then when we have no longer willpower, we tend to go to the other side, to the other extreme, which is I want to eat this and I will. That's the rebellion side. So I show my client that there's a space in between, which is, oh, actually, I used to think I wanted this, but I don't really want to. And it's not also, it's not, we're not forcing ourselves to say, no, I actually don't want this, because if we don't believe it, it's another form of willpower. We're using resistance. We're fighting ourselves. I shouldn't want this. It doesn't work in the long term. But if we slow down, as we mentioned earlier on, if we slow down and realize, first of all, that the food may not solve the issue at all, and if we notice also that we thought we wanted the food, but basically what we wanted was feeling acknowledged, feeling rewarded after a hard day of work, then we realize, oh, actually, I don't want the food genuinely. We don't have to force ourselves. And then the craving disappears. Because if you think about it, you don't feel deprived. It's not hard for you not to have what you don't want, right? I don't care
Right.
for driving at all. So I don't miss, I don't miss out for not having a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce or whatever. I don't care at all. So that's
Right.
where I take my clients to. It's just the genuinely, sincerely, honestly not wanting something, but also keeping the things that they do want, like me and my favorite chocolate. I do want my chocolate,
Me
but
too.
there are also other chocolates that no, I've made my peace with. I don't want them.
Well, and on this, if I could add to it, I also hear you saying from the brownie example, and it could be, I would like a croissant. I love croissants. Love them. So I want a croissant. What I hear you saying is, okay,
Mm-mm.
the best place to begin is to have it
Yes.
and to sit with it and to say, I'm going to use my five senses. Okay. I'm going to observe the smell. I love how the pieces just come off and you can
Yes.
just take a little bit. And being in the moment with the hamburger, with the spaghetti, with the chocolate, with the bag of chips, whatever it is, it's not necessarily about portion as much as it is about presence.
Yes.
Be present and then feel that. How does this feel? How does this bag of potato chips feel as I begin to sit and just reflect on what my body needs, what my thoughts are, what my emotion is? Yeah?
Exactly. Totally. We use our five senses to really enjoy this moment, this croissant, whatever it is, or this bag of chips. And also, we can take this time to connect, to reconnect with ourselves as to what am I feeling right now? And there are plenty of, I don't know if you're familiar with them, the feelings wheels on the
Oh,
internet,
yeah.
which help you learn what's the right word for what I'm experiencing right now. And also, why am I feeling this way? Because I'm thinking something about that. So it can be a beautiful way to reconnect with yourself when lots of my clients, just like me, are totally disconnected. I remember that for myself. I was using the food to numb myself, not to feel whatever I was feeling. So I had actually no clue as to what I was feeling. And I'm speaking in terms of feelings, but also sensations. I was stuffing myself so much that I didn't know what hunger was. And also, I
Right.
was afraid of being hungry because I was thinking that if I'm hungry, then I'll lose control. So it helped me reconnect on so many different levels with myself. And now I know
I love that.
if I'm
I
a
love
little
that.
hungry, it's okay.
Well, yes, if I'm a little hungry, it's okay. And I have something to add to this because there was this time in my life where I was really busy with my children, those younger years. I would always want um, Pepsi.
Mm,
And then I changed to Coke. But so I'm not really for one or the other. But it was really interesting when I started to think about um, why I wanted it. Because what was happening is I was wanting more. I would want a Pepsi instead of a coffee. And, because, like, I'm gotta get my fuel
mm,
because 'cause I've got 4 kids. And something happened one day, I can't remember, like, the circumstance, I just remember what I said to myself. And I think it was one of the first times where I realized, "Oh, my feelings are talking to me." And it was this, "I just want some sweetness in my life." And I went, "I want sweetness in my life. Wait a second. I'm not having sweetness." And that was really powerful for me because when I started realizing that, and then I was thinking, well, of course, at the end of my days, I'm not going to be sitting somewhere on the beach going, "The Pepsi gave me sweetness in my life." What do I want to create in my life that's going to give me sweetness?
yes.
That sweetness of satisfaction, and then I started to think about ways I could give my life that sweetness, the cherry on top, the sugar, the push to create something. And things started to slowly unravel for me. So I think that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And the body responds so quickly, Nan, right? Like when you ask the question of the body or give it the space, it will answer.
Yes. That's true.
Mm.
Yes. No, I love what you realized and yeah, your feelings talking to you. That's so true. They're always talking to us, telling us what we think and what we want and what we don't want, but we don't always pay attention. But I love that. I just want some sweetness in my life. And your version of sweetness, your definition of sweetness may look very differently from somebody else. It doesn't matter. Your definition is valid because it's yours, it's unique, it's perfectly fine. And what I like to do with my clients is that we don't want to suppress the wanting for the Pepsi or the Coke or anything else, but we can add more layers of sweetness with a pleasure plan. What brings you pleasure? And it can be playing with your kids or going on a trip or visiting something, reading a good book or chatting with a friend. But if you have plenty of ways to bring that sweetness or any other emotion, anything else in your life, then go for it, enjoy it, be present with this. And you'll notice that, yes, you don't need to turn to the food or the things outside of yourself to feel good. You have built a system for yourself, a lifestyle that brings you exactly what you want. And that's so powerful.
Love that. As we wrap up, what do you want our listeners to know? What would you say to them for those people who have felt so much shame and so much guilt and so much struggle and enslaved by the craving?
Totally. Yes, I like the way you describe it because enslaved by the craving is really how most of us feel or felt. Yes. And the main thing that I keep saying over and over again, because I think it's so important, is instead of being furious with yourself when you notice that you started the day telling yourself, I'll be good today, no cake, no chips. no, whatever is not on my plan. And you realize at the end of the day, yes, of course, you go to the food because this restriction backfired and you rebel against yourself. The first thing that I really want them to know is that instead of being furious with yourself, try to be curious. It's just one letter difference, but it
It
changes
sure
the
is.
whole thing. It can be hard to learn how to be curious with yourself when you're so used to using the stick instead of the carrot. But it's so important because when you're furious with yourself, you stay stuck. There's no room for improvement. When you start being curious, like a detective, I love detective shows, when you start being curious with yourself, then you ask yourself questions. You're also kind of neutral. You don't decide that it's bad or it's good. It's just, no, you're open and you're just not having a decision or judgment yet. You don't have to ever, but you're opening the door to understand what was going on and then to change the behavior. So really that's for me, it's really important to learn because it's a learning skill too. Learn to be curious instead of furious. And maybe you're already curious in your life. Simply, you can bring that curiosity to this area. If you're struggling with food, if you're eating more than you want to, try to be curious and you'll
Mm.
notice beautiful changes.
Oh, I love the curiosity piece. That's so important to me. I've done a lot of work in my life and looked at a lot of ways I've behaved and patterns and all the different things like you and I've talked about. And the one thing that has led me to myself help me return back to what I really wanted in my life is being curious. It's such a great word. I just get to explore and there's no path. There's not somebody saying to me, there's 7 ways to do this. No, no. Curious. That is open. It creates a freedom. It creates a playfulness. It creates maybe even ease. And sometimes you can feel really nervous about being curious because you don't know what you're going to expect. And so then you can just sit with that. What doesn't make me, why am I resistant
Yes.
to not being curious? So I really like what you've said. And I think what you just said it a couple minutes ago, you said the craving food equals something is off.
Hmm.
And now I can move to curiosity. That is absolutely wonderful. I love that. So I thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Where can people find you? How do people, how do people get connected to you?
Yes. Well, the easiest way to find me, the best place to find me is on my website, which is Milo, Milo, milobingefix.com. And this is where you'll see the women I help, how I work, and what life looks like when you stop binge eating. And it's so much better than
Yes.
what it used to be.
Yes, of course.
Mm,
Thank you so much. I
thank you.
appreciate you and thank you for taking this time to talk with me from Paris.
Yes, the land of croissant.
Oh, you have a you said you have a bakery that's down under oh, that
Totally,
must be just fabulous. How extraordinary. Coffee and a croissant.
totally.
Well, next time you're having that, please think of me
I
because,
will.
I've not been to Paris and I'd like to go.
Oh, well, do come. Come and visit us.
I
We're always
Yes,
happy.
of course. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really wonderful.
You're welcome.